welcome to The Word in Hospitality, a podcast powered by Mews. Every episode, we pick a word that we think encapsulates a key issue and merits a conversation. And this week, our word is connect, probably one of the most important words in the world of marketing. I'll introduce myself to get started. I'm LEAH ANATHAN. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Mews. So this is going to be a favorite topic for me. I think we chose the word connect because how brands connect to audiences and how they inspire and how they connect their audiences to big ideas, how they connect people to products. These are all, I think, at the heart of what we do in marketing. And I think in this moment, at this time when the atmosphere is very supercharged and senses are very heightened, you know, how we connect in this moment is really critical and important. And so I'm absolutely delighted to have two amazing speakers with us, two amazing ladies who are going to help explore this topic. I'd like to start by introducing CARA FEDERICI, who is the CEO and founder of the MELLE agency, and ROBECTA, a global marketing lead with AIRBNB. So welcome, CARA and ROBECTA.
Thank you. Hi.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Oh, well, it's a pleasure. It's an absolute pleasure. So why don't we get started with you, CARA? Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and the MELLE agency and what the mission of the agency is and why did you found it?
Yeah, sure. Well, hi. Thank you so much for having me. Really excited to share ideas and strategies today on this call. Couldn't agree more that connecting with our audiences, especially during this time, is so important and so much to do and be done, and really exciting time as well as really important time. So just to kind of tell you a little bit about the MELLE agency, we're an inventive lifestyle marketing and design studio with headquarters in Los Angeles and teams across the globe. Our areas of expertise include sales and marketing strategy, business acceleration strategy, interior design, graphic design, branding, innovation, and revenue strategy. My personal background is steeped in years of on-the-ground and C-level management across brands that many of you know well, including the Standard Hotels, Proper Hospitality, Pali Society, and others. With this experience, my team and myself have combined efforts to work really hard at the MELLE agency and acquire really notable clients, including Fast Company, Brookfield Properties, Soleil App, Bridgeton Hospitality, Two Bunch Palms, and other luxury and lifestyle brands. Amazing. Our mission is to create innovative, everlasting, and high-performance brands in the luxury and lifestyle space, as well as reinvigorate existing brands by clearly communicating our core values through storytelling and marketing techniques that resonate with target audiences, much of which we'll probably discuss today on this podcast. Through our inventive approach, we help our clients drive revenue and take advantage of new opportunities that they might not otherwise see. Yeah. So we have a really good time, and we put a lot of thought into what we do to help our clients succeed.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for that. And ROBECTA, I think everybody knows Airbnb and has booked an Airbnb, myself included. So can you tell us a little bit about your role there and what you're doing with Airbnb?
Yeah, definitely. Well, as everyone knows, Airbnb's mission is to create a world where anyone can belong anywhere. And if you know the platform as it is now, it is a homes and accommodations provider, an experiences provider. And one thing that we have been thinking about in terms of advancing our mission is to focus on how do we reimagine travel by building an end-to-end travel platform that combines where you stay, what you do, how you get there all in one place. So to achieve this, Airbnb has invested in creating a new business to power this growth over the long term. So I've been hired by Airbnb to spearhead the product and brand marketing launch for this brand new suite of products related to transportation. And I've been working with an incubation team for the past year or so on ideating what is the right kind of magical service that people are craving for in the travel space. Unfortunately, we're hit with a global pandemic. Not a lot of people can travel at this moment. So much of what we've been doing has taken a pause. And right now I'm actually currently working on a plethora of projects involving travel recovery and also our online experiences product.
Amazing, amazing. And also amazing to be part of an incubation effort within the brand. So really looking at, you know, some very emerging areas for Airbnb that they can explore going in the future. But I think your comment on everything's taken a pause has really connects to the next topic, pardon the pun, which is that, you know, it is one of the most challenging times in travel and tourism. And Airbnb is so well known for creating a global group of a global community of both hosts and travelers. But in this moment, the hosts have stopped hosting and the travelers have stopped traveling. So how has your organization stayed connected to those two audiences when the main activities that you would normally be engaged in have stopped? And how has that connection been maintained? And what do you think has resonated the most with those audiences?
Yeah, I would say that this has definitely been a difficult time for our host community. And I think when we were aware of the pandemic and you know, the after effect of how it would affect all of our host community, we employees actually donated $1 million from our own pockets to kickstart a fund for hosts struggling to make ends meet. And because of that, our founders have also contributed $9 million in addition, and another $7 million from investor, with a total of $17 million to create this host relief fund for our hosts. So to date, we have awarded 8,700 hosts with received grants up to $5,000, and not just assisting hosts within the US. 67% of the hosts are outside of US, and also to address some of, you know, our current essential workers. Some of our hosts have also volunteered to have their place to host frontline workers. So we've been able to connect them with medical workers, nurses, anybody that needed to stay while they're conducting essential work. Our hosts have been very graciously offering their space to them. As for our guests, it's definitely a challenging landscape to navigate right now because there are travel restrictions. There's also impacts that have become more widespread. So we have implemented some more flexible reservations to give travelers more of a peace of mind when they're booking and help hosts secure more reservations in the long run. So hoping to give our travelers easier filter search to know when is, you know, the right time to book, or what's the most appropriate cancellation policy, and also offer 100% guest service fee refund. So then when guests need to cancel, they are able to do so and can be used on a future trip. What I'm most excited about is actually our experiences platform. During the pandemic, we realized that our experienced hosts really wanted to find a way to connect with guests, especially when everyone is shelter in place and it's stuck at home. So the experiences team had actually created a brand new product called Online Experiences, where guests from all around the world can come into Airbnb's platform to book a variety of online experiences with our hosts around the world, like knowing how to make sangria in Spain or knowing how to make pasta in Italy, to keep people connected with the world.
Yeah, amazing. Because in that, what I hear is, you know, first, reassurance is part of how you're staying connected, which is to try to provide some reassurance and some security to your hosts, and then some inspiration to the guests through what you're through inspiring them of staying connected to experiences that they might have in the future, and inspiring them through the travel that can happen, the sangria, the cuisine, the locations. And that's a remarkable set of programs, I think, and the scale that you can achieve there is really quite remarkable. CARA, you have a list of clients and you've mentioned some of them. I gravitate to some of those boutique hotels because they read like a bucket list, and I actually have your agency bookmarked as my bucket list for travel because, and actually if you're a huge fan, I'm a huge fan of interior design, and I'm slightly obsessed with how you do design for small spaces because of living in London or in other European cities where we're a little constrained on space, and you have some of the most, inspiring, it's like a Pinterest wall just off of your client list. So what have you been telling these clients who have these really, special destinations and really very interesting offers? What have you been advising them during this time, and how are they handling their own connections to their audiences?
Yeah, thank you. So a lot of what ROBECTA said really resonates with me as well, because we share a similar sentiment and approach, which is staying true to your core value proposition and also making sure that you stay connected by inspiring your audience. And, I think early on in the pandemic, it was really important to tell your story and keep your guests inspired about what it would be like to go back to your property when it's time and when they're able to. But I think the brands that really do it well, and our clients specifically, what we tell them is to take the time now to work on what your brand means to your audience and what it means to you, and really do the due diligence and put the time in, and then lay out your marketing strategy to effectively communicate that message. I think, I know one of the topics we're going to talk about is brands that have, had epic fails during this time. And we can learn from that by really considering the fact that honesty and integrity with who you are, no matter what size your business is or what, type of company you are, is so important. And it's really clear in your marketing and messaging if you are not true to your identity, and if you try to pivot too drastically in a direction that your audience is not typically used to or doesn't expect you to do, they're going to second guess you, and they're going to question what you're really all about and what your purpose is. So we do a lot of that behind the scenes work with our clients to make sure that when they come to market with what they're going to say, it really is, it's true and resonates in the right way.
Yeah. And probably, I would imagine, because we've talked about this before, over communicating and providing a lot of that reassurance at this time is so important. So there's the authenticity, the authentic experience of that brand, and then reassurance that if they're open and they're able to, are many of your clients now in the process of reopening?
Yes, absolutely. And that's a different phase of communication than what it once was. And so to your point, it's really important that you're not only focused on inspiring your guests to come back, but you're reassuring them that it's okay. I think one of the things that we also focus on is the training internally. And I'm sure Airbnb and many other organizations also do this, but focusing on your service culture and who you are, and training your team to understand it from the inside out, so that once you're open and the guests are coming back, what you've told them online or what you've done in your digital strategy is really true once they're there. And that's in any business and any trade, really.
Yeah. And on that reopening, which we've discussed as well, it is about setting those expectations, because the connections that happen once people are at the properties, if they're traveling and going to a hotel, the experiences can be so different from prior. It might even include things like you arrive and there's a temperature check at the lobby, which is a whole new set of experiences. And so the communication there is, and setting expectations is so key.
Yeah. And one of the other things that you can do, even after you've opened, or if you're still in the process of reopening, is you can survey your guests. I've seen that become a really valuable tool that in the past has been sort of like left behind and used, once a guest is at the property and after they've left, but you can use those type of surveys before to understand what's most important to the traveler or to, the user of your product, et cetera. And also get them engaged with how they can contribute to what your offering looks like for them specifically in a customized way when they start coming back.
Yeah, great. Really interesting. Well, and you touched on this, which is the next topic, where I think, in this environment, there's been some real hit and misses. And I say in this environment, it's not just the pandemic. We've got a situation where there's social justice issues at the headlines, and we oscillate between the leading headline in our news being the latest numbers from the pandemic or the latest protests. So it's quite a supercharged environment. And we've seen some real missteps and we've seen some great successes. So, on the missteps, I think L'Oreal is not the only one, but they're one brand who stood out as maybe not hitting the mark and having some backlash online for some things they said in the Black Lives Matter movement. And then conversely, Ben & Jerry's is another example that I see who've just been exemplary in how they've communicated, and which is most unusual for an ice cream company. So I think for the two of you who think about brands as much as you do and connecting with audiences, why do you think there are hit and misses in this environment? What does it take to really get this right in an environment like this? ROBECTA, do you want to start on this one?
Yeah, sure. I think what's interesting about our current climate is that I think when this movement of Black Lives Matter is it's really surfacing up to everyone's dialogue. Almost every brand out there, kind of offer this blanket statement on social media that they're gonna support diversity. They're gonna do anything that required to make sure diversity is embraced, and they're gonna support the movement. But in actuality, what's interesting is that a week or maybe like a week or two later, some companies actually, some employees from companies actually came out and said, you know what? Action speaks louder than words. Your words on social media it's not substantial because you haven't really taken actions to solve challenges. So you actually see, it's fascinating to see how some of these companies in the past few weeks have completely turned or have completely changed because of this movement. So I think it's a really kind of like a conscious moment where everyone wants to be awakened, everyone wants to lead with integrity, and everyone's calling out those who are not. Yeah. I would say one of my favorite brands that I felt have done this well was actually Nike. I think in the beginning, they really played a proactive role in kind of sharing optimism and also sharing that their brand DNA in terms of continuing to, play sports, continue to exercise inside, even though you can't do it outside, and also offer consistent content updates, whether it's on their app, on their podcasts, offering workouts on YouTube, catering different types of audience. I think it was a very well aligned strategy in terms of making it relevant for your audience, very timely, timely messages, but also people can take part as if they were in a community. Yeah. So I would say they've done a really good job in terms of navigating this.
And I think consistency is such an important word, because if I do observe that maybe the brands who've been called out in this, they've been called out for inconsistency, not consistency. Right. So I think that's a really important theme. And we were trying to pay attention to that ourselves and say, have we been consistent on this issue? Do we need to do more internal conversations to make sure that we're aligned so that we are consistent, on any number of these topics, because they really do matter. CARA, what do you think? What do you observe in terms of the hit and misses and why it happens?
Yeah, I think similar to what I said before, I think that the brands that have always, I think like, for example, with Ben & Jerry's in specific, brands that have always been about, they've always had a true authentic contribution to social issues over time. When they come out now and they speak of what they're doing or they talk about their point of view, they're viewed with credibility and a real level of truth. Whereas other brands that have never said one word about it, that are now coming out and taking a stand, and to ROBECTA's point, not backing it up with actions, or have previously done things that are the opposite of what they're claiming, those are the brands that are really having epic fails and really need to be more thoughtful about what they say. I mean, I think now it is a time where you are really scrutinized for anything that you do. And because, the people in general are at home or they're more on social media, they're really taking the time to read, and they're taking the time to look and align with products and brands that they feel good about, and they're really connecting their emotional and core values to brands. And for example, Facebook, with boycotting and like, people are really taking it personally, whereas before it might have been something that they read about and they select a hotel to stay at because they know that they have a charitable contribution to a cause, but they don't really consider it so personally or as much as they do now. So I think brands like Twitter, for example, going so far as to allow their staff to work from home permanently forever, those type of movements that are backed with real action are the ones that are successful, and the ones that I think will stand the test of time and put their brands ahead of others in the long run. So you're gaining, you're not just acting for a cause that's a good cause, but you're also gaining new, probably lifetime customers and clients because of this.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how the environment has changed so dramatically. And I heard an analyst talk about it in this context, which I thought it set the scene perfectly, which is that we've been acting so intensely for our communities since the pandemic started, that when we saw communities being affected yet again through violence or through injustice, that the reaction was so much stronger than it had been in the past, because the mindset is community right now. We're taking actions not just for ourselves, but for our neighbors, for the places that we live, for the elderly people who are around us. And with that mindset, our responses have changed a lot. So I think that authenticity, I think that brands need to understand, as you've highlighted, that that's the context in which they're operating in this moment. And there is, I think the authenticity is a really key part of it, but also your comment of they're being judged, and the actions that they take right now could lead to a lifelong following, or potentially on the other side, a really lifelong aversion that would have to be overcome. It's a fascinating moment, although I have to say, every time a campaign goes out, the heart rate is up and you're sweating and you're triple checking 15 times. Is this right? But so it's a good moment. And maybe we should have had that kind of awareness and sweat before. We'll always probably carry this with us. So let's take this to I'm always personally fascinated by the behind the scenes work that happens, because of course you're in marketing. I mean, by everybody gets to see the final product, the amazing video, the big campaign, the advertising. And I'm always intrigued, how did it happen? And how do you take, so Carl, let me start with you. How do you take, particularly for emerging brands, how do you take them from idea to a launch? And what's your playbook for making sure it does connect with the audience? Like, how do you take the risk out of that?
Well, without giving away all of our secrets, I will give you a little glimpse into what we do. I think the one thing that we always say to our clients, our existing clients, and even new prospective clients, is that we put a lot of time into the due diligence and the understanding in the beginning. And this is a lot of what I've said, and even some of the strategies that you deploy on a regular basis, is not acting too quickly. And so we like to get underneath all of the stakeholder goals and objectives, and we typically do it with a survey and a lot of conversation. And in addition to that, we then do a good amount of research, and we look at the competitive landscape and the marketplace and the community and what's happening in the world. And before we deploy any tactic or strategy, we want to be able to connect those dots together to make sure that it's not only the right message that's, you know, achieving the goal, the business goal, but also at the right time in the world, you know. And this is a perfect sort of example of that. We also do a lot, in addition to creative brainstorming and just think tank work, we do a lot of A/B testing. So we, you know, to your point about like the sweating and the nervousness when a campaign goes out, you know, a lot of times we will do messaging or marketing in, whether it be a focus group or a small subset of our huge audiences, in order to get feedback and to see what worked and didn't, so that when we come out with something on a more grand scale, we have a little bit more confidence in knowing how it's going to be received. So it's not really a one-sided approach, but it's more of a holistic, collaborative sort of methodology, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. That's great. So it is really about brainstorming intensely the concepts, testing. Of course, testing is so key, with some small trusted focus groups, and then going to the rollout and maybe starting small and getting bigger over time.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. That sounds like a familiar playbook, which is a good thing.
A few other little things that we sprinkle in there that
there's some secret sauce, and we'll let you keep the secret sauce. Not all the secrets of Madison MELLE need to be shared, but conceptually that makes some sense. Yeah. And ROBECTA, you've got, you know, the very established brand, but even with it, I mean, you've just already spoken about a number of campaigns that have gone out that were probably had to be conceived and launched very quickly. What's the playbook that you run, and how do you guys go from idea to launch with Airbnb?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think for some of the examples that I've shared, much of the product from ideation to execution, for example, with online experiences, it only took around 2 weeks for people to put it live to the platform. So wow. I think you can speak to that. That really speaks to kind of the passion and the drive behind the team in terms of helping our hosts and guests to solve and confront challenges. And Airbnb being a very design-led company, I think often when we create product, or even when we look at campaigns, it's really thinking about solving challenges and problems. Like what do our guests need? What do our hosts need? And making sure that, you know, the product or the campaign we put out, it really feels relevant and authentic, and because it is at the root of our vision in terms of, you know, creating belonging. It's definitely something that we truly embed in every execution that we do.
And who are the cast of characters then in the room? Because that speed of 2 weeks is a ferocious speed given the scale that is then on the other side of a campaign. So who are some of the key profiles? You said it's design led. Clearly there's design at the heart of it. And then do you take it with like a SWAT team approach? And
I would say so. Yeah, I would probably say it's kind of like a gathering of forces together to make it work. And you know, everybody from marketing, from design to research, and I think this is what's magical about the moment during this time is everybody's rallying, everybody's kind of coming together and be like, how can I help? How can I, you know, improve the, you know, current situation? How can we help our hosts? How can we help our guests? I think we actually, I do feel like we personally embody that mission to try to make the community better, or you know, find a way to solve immediate problems. And I think going back to what you asked about, playbook and process, it's quite simple. I feel like it's really about like knowing, your true DNA. Like, what does it mean to be, what does it mean to have everyone belong in the world? And what does it mean for people to feel hosted?
Yeah.
And as long as you have that vision and that kind of vision very clear, crystal clear, it can ladder down to any execution that you put out in on the platform. And because community is so rooted in our company, we also make sure that every single thing that we share, every single initiative that we push out does have our community in mind. And I think that's a really unique characteristic that we see in travel companies that others might not have.
Yeah.
Because the hosts and guest community are so key to our existence. And I would say last but not least, I'm a big fan of research. I love working with the research team, whether it is sharing prototypes with and focus groups, or continuing to reiterate and improve the product or the campaign and get people from all around the world's feedback. As such, I think that is so helpful to just kind of do a gut check and like, how do people from different parts of the world or different demographics or preferences react to, your specific product or specific messaging. And I think it's so key to understand different types of motivations and preferences to inform purchasing decisions.
It really is. I mean, it is marketing really is at the heart of the art and the science, the creativity and the data at the same time. And I think today you have to have a passion for both in order to get it right. You have to have passion for the data and for the creativity and the spirit of what you're trying to achieve. But I love that the vision is what drives. It sounds very much like, Airbnb has their North Star. And everyone, because that's so clearly articulated, everything really, as you said, ladders up and ladders down from there. So that's quite inspiring as well, because you tend to think of, as it's gone from a startup to a big global organization, that is how I think it sounds like you're keeping your authenticity at any size of the organization. And that's really quite interesting. So we're getting towards our last question, although with the two of you, I could probably go on for another hour, but you're both busy ladies and your day is kicking off and people are competing for your time. So I'm going to take advantage of this last question, which is the word disconnect, and that the fact that past months have forced us to really disconnect from travel, from offices, from family, from friends. And I think in general, it's been incredibly hard for everyone, but has there been a silver lining for you in the disconnect that's happened? And what has been your favorite part of being disconnected?
I'll go first.
Yeah, please go for it.
Because I actually am very excited about this. So I think, we're, like you said, we're all busy. And I think even everybody watching this podcast is super busy, especially since companies have scaled down and you're doing more with less staff. But I found that throughout this process, that previous to the pandemic, I really had no quiet time. So I would wake up in the morning and I would immediately start getting ready for work and, dealing with personal life and getting in the car and getting to the office and, having calls along the way, and same thing at the end of the day. And it almost felt like there was never a time to just have, peace of thought or peace of mind. And so in this pandemic, I've taken the time to embrace the quiet time. And in terms of creativity, it's exponentially expanded my ability to really think outside the box. And I've started journaling my ideas and thoughts as they come, because I've realized that I probably had a lot of these ideas before, but they were just evaporating because I didn't actually have the time to maybe transcribe them or look at them a second time and utilize them in a way that serves my clients or serves my business or my personal life. So it's been that has been a really silver lining that I will continue as, things continue to ramp back up, and that I've also asked my team to do as well. So,
that's remarkable, actually, because I think when it's almost like going to a rock concert, and if you're there all the time, you're used to that noise level. And
right.
when you finally step out of the auditorium, your ears are ringing because you realize how noisy it was. And it's almost like being in that environment where you just stepped out of the rock concert and you're like, wow, I can actually hear myself think.
Yeah, exactly. It's been great.
It's a really, really interesting example. ROBECTA, how about for you?
I like that analogy of the rock concert. That's very visual.
Yes.
Yeah, I think what I found this time to be special is that I definitely have a lot more FaceTime with my 3-year-old son. So he's at home all the time, and really going to spend a lot more time with him. And I think it's great. It kind of like, what CARA says in terms of, there's always this hustle and bustle before where you have to, rush to meetings, rush to schedulings, or going to the office. Like you lost time, the kind of in between times. And I think this is a moment where you can really collect yourself and be still in one place, and have a lot of free time to think about what with these pockets of time now, what can you do? I've actually been having a lot of conversations with young graduates, and also with some African American entrepreneurs, especially during this time. There's a special yearning for them to connect with people that have more experiences, just to get more advice and insights into what's, how to network, like how to build a career, what's the right marketing job for me. So I found it to be very rewarding, to just spend time to just talk to someone that just graduated or someone that just got laid off, and help them kind of brainstorm ideas on, what next steps could be. And I don't think, had we not have this pandemic, I really don't think, these type of conversations or these type of opportunities would have happened. So I'm definitely grateful for being able to make more connections, especially connections that I usually would not build at all.
Yeah, those are great examples. And over on my side, I think I've discovered my neighborhood, even though I'd lived in it for more than a year. I think I'd finally discovered my neighborhood just by taking walks around it and saying hi to people I think people are much more social now with their neighbors. And I think that's been, it comes to this community aspect. There are people I see now every day who I never saw before this started, because we would all leave at our various times and be gone. And so remarkable that the disconnect actually created a new set of connections with our neighborhoods and our neighbors and our community. And I think that's been, at least on my side, really amazing to see. Well,
Totally.
This is wonderful. And, being in marketing, we love to chat. So I was told that I needed to cut this off at a half an hour, but I had to be told to do that because otherwise I would keep you guys going for probably another hour. I want to take a moment to thank you, CARA and ROBECTA, for this wonderful conversation. It is, it's wonderful to get your perspectives, and I think this has been very enlightening for those of us who have a great passion for brands and connections to audiences and authentic brand experiences and meaningful connections in that context. So thank you very much for that. And thank you to all of the listeners who have stayed with us on the word in hospitality. And that concludes our episode on Connect.